And to give children an experience outside of traditional educational experiences where they probably couldn't afford Montessori, because we all know Montessori can be very expensive, is we're taking children who are significantly below grade level, maybe 2 to 3 years, ranging from kindergarten all the way to the 5th grade. He'll be coming in 2 to 3 times a week. The children will be going in increments to get this explicit learning. When it comes to literacy, I think that this is an amazing opportunity for children in our community and other communities to get the experience to travel outside of what their normal engagement is in the school. And I like the fact that parents are engaging in this as well. Not only are the children learning, but the parents are learning. And so that's why having the Montessori on Wheels in the community, where we have some of the most underserved population, is just fantastic. You know that if you don't have literacy, you cannot have transferable skills in mathematics, in social sciences, in STEM projects. You have to have literacy, and that's where it starts. They are learning anywhere, anytime on Wheels.
The vision that Tatenda has, not just for the children and the parents and the communities that Rungano serves, but is that opportunity to really dream again. Something very radical and different than what our children typically see in a public education system. Those spaces are not always safe, particularly for Black and brown children. Most of our children, in terms of, you have to navigate obstacles, and it's dependent upon parents, maybe community members, extended family, to sort of help children navigate, think about this, to help them navigate a system that may not be designed for them. Every time the bus shows up to a school, it's an opportunity for a group of kids to dream and play. It's an opportunity for parents to rekindle about the future they envision for their children. It's even an opportunity for those teachers and leaders in schools to say, can we do this differently? How can we maybe capture this moment and experience and think and design something very different? How could you maybe take this idea of a different learning experience that's rooted in equity, that's rooted in Indigenous practices, and then what could another community take those same concepts with and create? Start with this premise of something that's very democratic, that's equitable, and then you give folks space to sort of create and problem solve and say, what resources do we have? How can we maybe do something different? So it's not just the model itself being replicated in different places. I think it's more about the ideas and values being replicated in traditional school spaces, in very traditional community spaces, that you can really create something different and unique and relevant to that community and whatever needs there are in that community. He is a visionary, and I think part of that is you have to be a storyteller. Most visionaries are storytellers. So how do you paint this picture visually, in words, in actions, to invite folk in? Feeling. People maybe remember more about the experience of being on the bus, of being around Tatenda, of being around the kids, that really gets them like, oh, so this is what this really is. So I think it's all about those experiences more than anything else, because we remember those, and you remember how you were treated in that space. You remember how it felt to sort of sit and break bread and have dialogue and conversation. So I think that's how this organization has grown and will continue to grow, because that's really what the bus is about. That's really Rungano, those values and what you experience on the bus.
So Montessori on Wheels is, a community-based program where we try to essentially bring education in a different design than it would normally be delivered, and then just try to make sure that our, Black and brown babies are reading and, doing math and science to grade level, expectations. And then when they're not, then we're there to sort of save the day in a sense, and try to do that intervention work and give them the skills that they need to be successful in education. Really, we want to really push literacy and phonics work, so that we can we find that most kids, when they pass third grade, if they're not reading at grade level, they tend to really fall behind more and more. So we're trying to step in to make sure that all those kids, especially early, we feel if we can catch them before they're third graders and make sure that they're have confidence in themselves, as well as their ability to be successful in education. We think that that is where we really want to get them. But even then, we will work with the fourth and fifth graders and, get them the tools that they need. And now it's just trying to build those relationships with the schools and with the community so that they see the value in the work that we bring. Yeah, in a bus on wheels, and just that environment that kids are, going to experience something new, and they're like, this isn't the classroom. So it kind of just brings an excitement from them, like they're really more bought in than in the traditional classroom. Yes, it's like it's a heartbeat. That's why we love the heart on our bus, because it really brings love to the community, and then people know when they see that bus, it's starting to really catch on, and they know that good things are happening. So I'm super excited. This isn't something that was available for me when I was a kid. So just to have the opportunity to be able to be something new and sort of a trailblazer for other nonprofits, to be able to change how we look at education, I think that's very special, and I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Yeah. Learning doesn't have to happen on the bus. We want kids to sort of appreciate that learning can happen anywhere, and I think using the bus as a lens just to help them to be able to see that, I think it's great. There's a real legacy that's sort of being built, where 10 years down the road, where, we'll be a staple in at least the Denver and Aurora community, just as far as like a symbol of education and a symbol of the commitment to the community and a commitment to the kids, not only pushing forward a narrative that only certain kids can learn, and just sort of breaking down those barriers so that anytime anyone sees the bus, they know that, oh, that's education, and I can strive to be educated, to inspire the change that I want to see in education, for sure. And I think that this is a great place to start. We're kind of flipping education on its head, and I think it's something that needs to happen so that we can really be equitable with every kid, not just the ones who are able to, access education in a sense,
One of the beautiful things about Montessori on Wheels is the investment that they have in community, the investment they have in bringing members of the community together to help collaborate, to build something that's really resonant for the community that they want to develop it for. And I think they've put in just the processes in place to really surface involvement from a wide body of people. I think really intentionally centering parents in this effort, to me, feels really important. And I think when I think about this idea of community design, I think really centering the parents is really important. Oftentimes they are left out of this conversation, but we know that parents care so deeply about their children's learning experience. And I think being proactive in enlisting their perspectives just goes so far. And I also think the benefit is it just starts to build a stronger community. I think one of the big purposes of Montessori on Wheels is to create access, right, and to expose the Montessori principles to students who oftentimes don't have access to it. But I think it's a big lift, right, to shift the system so that they're providing more access. And I think that becomes an engine for those kids to have exposure, but I also think it creates the capacity for those parents to advocate for more of these practices to be taken up in the formal school setting as well too. So I look at it as a partnership between Montessori on Wheels and then the communities that they hope to serve. I know that they are really attuned into the student's experience, right? And I know that the student's voice is really important around how they want to develop the experiences. Co-design has to do with the teachers and the schools that they partner with as well too. And I think that there's an exchange. So where the teachers can really learn how to bring some of these principles back into the classroom as well too. It really becomes this idea of just creating a community around the students, right? And just this collaboration to make sure that students are getting access to the resources that they really need. One of the beauties of when you're able to actually go into those communities, right, and try to be a part of those communities, I think the key is actually trying to build authentic relationships with those students, with those parents, and with those teachers who are in those communities. Really, what's needed for those particular young people, right? And I think that's one of the cool things about it being on a bus is that like you can go into different contexts, and I think you can be flexible for what people need in those different context as well too.
It's all about having kids tell their story, and then we tell the story of education, of how we're coming together to create a space where they get to learn, where they get to thrive and just show their brilliance. So Rungano really taps into that African wisdom of query and response, that what happens if we really have learning spaces where we get to hear stories from children, who they are, from their parents, right, as their first educator and forever educator, like who is my child as a learner, and then we get to share with them what we're doing as we're helping them understand this concept, learn and discover the world around them. We're really rooted in storytelling as technology. Before schools existed in indigenous cultures in Africa, we had ways in which we have always learned, right? I think our elders knew that they had this responsibility to teach the young ones as they become part of an ecosystem community, this idea of UNO or Ubuntu, right? Like we get to see yourself in others. So learning has always existed prior to institutions, to this brick and mortar model of learning. A sense of it takes a village sort of like really is true to its core of everybody is responsible for everyone. So learning has always existed prior to schools as we know of them as this brick and mortar. So that's where I really wanted to take this idea of moving education. Like, what if we go back to the creation of learning spaces where we learned before we had to send our kids away to a building? Think about doing education with families, not to families. I go into their neighborhood, into their community, right, where they have more power, where they really have more strong presence, then they're able to share their child with us and also be part of that co-creation of what learning can look like if we think of them as the educator. So one of our values is collaboration. So we are really thinking about how are we deconstructing our identity as teachers to that of a guide, that of like we are in partnership with the parents. They know their child better. If they tell me who their child is as a learner, I'm able to assist in that learning. I really want them to know that they are strong learners, that they can learn, that they love learning, that they have ownership of their learning, that they don't have to wait to be taught, that they love learning, that they are curious, that they ask questions, that they think about spaces as potential where they can learn anytime, anywhere. So I really want to see a world or a community where Black and brown kids especially, that they are not getting to learn something for the first time in schools, but they've already interacted with some of these concepts in their communities, in their homes, in different spaces, so that learning is sort of like familiar. Hope that we are creating communities that take ownership of their learning, where everybody is an educator, everybody has a sense of agency to educate our own kids, not just wait for schools to do it. To me, again, the village is a practice, right? So if we're able to tap into that practice within our urban settings of just taking ownership of our communities and our children, that if we're to really preserve our communities, we have to have a sense of agency that has us take responsibility in educating our own children and also creating spaces where they get to learn all the time. There was a time when schools were not so much far removed from the communities. Like you would walk to school and you'd learn, from your neighbor, from the uncle down the street, from that little shop as you walk to school. So what if our kids have that experience where they also see how learning is connected to where they are. We've been fortunate enough to be well received in the communities because people really love this idea of creating magic for learning for kids, right? So we hope that this will create space where it's safe for the kids to dream, play, and design what learning looks like for them.
I am fairly new to Montessori when I started with Montessori on Wheels, but I've known that it's something that you see mostly in schools that are mostly with white children. I have never seen, or at least when I went to school, I never heard of it. I've never heard of new ways of learning for children that look like myself. I just love seeing their little smiles and how different everything looks, and realizing that there's new ways of learning. Like, you can just see it in their face. One time I was explaining to a little kid how to solve a math problem using Montessori equipment, and he was just so good at it. Like, he got it, and I wish that was something that more children at camp could experience. Like, I see their excitement to just be in the bus and get to learn in new ways. Because Montessori, from everything that I've seen, I've learned that it just helps children become more confident, and that they know that the adult is trusting them, where they know what they need to learn at what pace. Mostly, I really want children like me to be more confident, and I think Montessori can do that. I saw it was a lot of Latino students, a lot of Latino parents, mostly moms, and they would get in the bus and I would tell them how to use the material to teach their kids, and I love seeing that they just got it, and you can tell that they love to being able to teach their children.
Treating children as independent, contributing members of society is really powerful, and it transforms your role as a parent to respect your child in a way that you didn't before. And it brought the joy to parenting because it wasn't about a control scenario, it was about supporting. Typically, Montessori schools are not in every community. They're typically in affluent communities. And so to bring it to the children, it gives them access that they didn't have before.
What do we do with this great gift that is Montessori that only so few people actually have access to it? How do we fix that? And I think it is a very novel idea to make it mobile, but also make it fit the community that it's going into. So instead of just like, okay, well, we can just have a bunch of people from other communities come into our school, which does it, which makes sense to the community that it is in. Well, let's instead bring the underlying concepts and the beauty of Montessori, and let it make sense in the community that's going to, and those people can get that done. That's worth my time to support them, because this isn't ephemeral. This is real.
We've had an amazing first year of operation. We have so many amazing school partners and community partners, and have met so many amazing children and families who really want this type of programming in their lives. Parents want to know who their children are as learners, and they want to be able to advocate for them. We fit a really niche that maybe people didn't even realize was there, that needed to be filled in a lot of ways, because parents want to support their kids, and they often feel like schools have maybe taken them out of that equation. I think the pandemic even exacerbated that further when they couldn't go into their kids' schools. I think creating that bridge between parents, students, with schools and teachers is just such a necessary step. Parents are their child's first and always teacher. You're always learning something from your parents. And I think societally, that's shifted and had been taken away. And I think it's really important that we honor the role that parents play in their child's lives, and really work to support and bolster that as much as we can. I think we've forgotten as a society, the power of community, the power of ancestors, the power of learning in that way, and we've looked at school as the place where learning takes place. And that's one place where learning can happen, but it's certainly not the only place. I feel like the bus is magical and joyful. If I can think of one word, like when the parents and kids are on the bus, it's joy. It's a safe place. It's a place where everyone can be themselves. It's a place where they can ask questions, where they can be vulnerable, and a place that is fluid enough in its design that it can constantly evolve and change, dependent on who we're working with that day. Some days we have early childhood language materials, and that's our focus, is really honing in on those literacy skills for young learners. The next day we might be at a high school and really looking at more like the social emotional learning that needs to happen at that age for teenagers. Tatinda and I together work on relationship building and getting to know each organization as its own individual entity, recognizing that the members of that organization have very unique needs and that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's just something really different. And I know that within like the Denver and Aurora community, we definitely need to expand. We need more outreach. The demand is there, but with one bus and with our small team right now, we've had to stay kind of within the confines of our current capacity. But I definitely can see us expanding further, having more buses, having more program opportunities in these next few years. And then we've had a lot of interest from people around the country who want to maybe have some similar model within their own community for their own children. We have people, who work within our board or on our team that have been in education 30 plus years. And we have people who are, this is their first year, maybe in a formal education setting and everywhere in between. And I think what I love the most is just the collaboration that happens within that. I think having that growth mindset has just been really key, that we all have something to bring to the table, and active listening and learning from one another creates something really beautiful.